Hello, Garland Nixon here. Hi, Garland Nixon here. I am with Laith Marouf. We got a lot to talk about. All the things that are going on, West Asia, Persia, the Middle East. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here with Laith Marouf. A couple of things. Number one, and most importantly, before we get going, Laith has a website, freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video. And they do a lot of work, English language work, a lot of very dangerous work. They're out and about reporting on all the things going on in Lebanon and all throughout the Middle East. So make sure you go to that web, you go to their site, freepalestine.video. And when you get there, it's critical that you donate to try to help keep them going. It's important. We get a lot of information from the mainstream media, and a lot of information comes out, but it's in Arabic, it's in Farsi, it's in various languages from the Middle East. What we need is more English language stuff to get out to the Western world. That's what they're doing. freepalestine.video. Make sure when you go there that you donate, and whether you can or can't donate, that's fine. You have to make a decision based on your financial circumstances, but share freepalestine.video on all of your social media platforms, and make sure you put a note on that post for people also to donate so we can help keep this operation going. All right, Laith. Well, we got a whole bunch of things going on. Let's start with this. Allegations of rape. Well, we've had just people die. The Israelis will admit that people are dying in prisons. They won't say how, young, healthy people when they go in prison and they come out dead. But now we have strong allegations and serious allegations of rapes, gang rape, sexual assaults, exactly what they accused Hamas of. To this date, there's been no evidence presented of it, but we see, the usual, it's not me, it's you that's doing it, right? Going on. And apparently, and this is the really outrageous part, is if the acts weren't outrageous enough, the accusations, apparently, rather than hold the people who are accused accountable, there has been actions by members of the Israeli government to shield them from being held accountable. Your thoughts? What do we know that's going on, Laith Marouf?
So since the war on Gaza began, the Israelis created this death camp, this concentration camp, right in the desert across from Gaza, and where they're holding tens of thousands of Palestinians that have been disappeared. And since the beginning of this war, at least 30 of the people that have been held there have died in this prison. What we know now is that there is a gang of soldiers there that are, gang raping the Palestinian prisoners, women, children, and men. One of these prisoners had a cell phone inserted up his anal cavity, and they even filmed themselves calling this phone and filming the inside of his anal cavity, basically, through this call. He was rushed to the hospital, and we don't know his health situation, but that made it into the social media sphere because people were sharing this video, and it became impossible to shield these crazy soldiers from the law. So, and given that the ICJ have already ruled that Israel is using rape as a weapon of, in this war, the Israeli military police moved to try to cover up the Israeli government by, trying to arrest these 10 soldiers in this prison, just to make it look like Israel is doing something, that it has a judicial system, that the International Court of Justice shouldn't be intervening. But as these military police went into this jail to arrest these 10 soldiers and bring them to trial, a firefight ensued between the soldiers and the military police. And at the same time, there was gangs of settlers, colonists led by members of parliament and led by actual ministers in the government of Netanyahu, who went to the prison and had a riot. They actually went in, beat up the military police, and were trying to break into the jail cells to also gang rape the Palestinian prisoners in there. That led to chaos, and at one point the military police decided to make a public statement that they're not arresting these soldiers anymore, that they're just bringing them to questioning and that they will be released. They managed to take these 10 soldiers to another base. That base got attacked by rioters, and then the military police court was also attacked by rioters. All of these actions were led by members of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and by ministers, as I said. And in fact, there was a discussion in the Knesset about this, and members of parliament argued that it is legal to rape Palestinians, that this is fine. This is what was the argument in the parliament. So now we have this as an official state policy. Anyone that had this idea in their head that the Israeli military is the most honorable in this world, of course, can see now what kind of honor this military has. And this has been a policy going on for, since the beginning of the creation of this colony. Case after case of mass rapes of Palestinian women, men, and children since 1948 have been documented. But now we can see how the Zionist colony is edging towards civil war. And this is what the axis of resistance has been trying to bet on, to not allow a full-out regional war. And under the pressures of the support fronts from across the region, that there will be an internal collapse. And we see that right now playing out inside the Zionist colony.
It seems to me that what is happening inside of occupied Palestine, the Zionist government, is they're such extremists that they cannot really operate as a rational, civilized group of people. They're not, at this point, based on their actions, it's clear. A, they're not rational, and B, clearly they're not civilized. And rational, irrational, uncivilized people can't operate as a group. They're going to fight outside, sure, but they're irrational, uncivilized. I mean, these people, they're just violent people. And I certainly can see the logic that left to their own means, they'll just beat the hell out of each other and end up, crumbling from the inside.
Yes. I mean, it's, one thing about them being irrational actors, it makes it, hard to predict how they will behave. So the axis of resistance, has been betting that there will be some rationality in the Israeli government and or the Western elite, that they, because if there is anybody with a rational decision making in Washington, D.C. or in Tel Aviv, this war would have been ended long time ago. But given that these individuals are irrational, that the only thing that is in their head is supremacy, you see, and when these individuals that think that they are the chosen people, and that they're the best thing since sliced toast, okay, are faced with the reality on the ground, losing the battle against the barefoot fighters in Gaza, losing the battle in the air against Hezbollah, losing the battle in the sea against Ansarullah in Yemen. They're unable to, correspond the reality on the ground to the irrationality in their head, that this supremacist feeling. And this is driving them to continuously make actions that take actions and decisions that are unpredictable. And that is the scariest thing, I think, for all of us in this region. If, as we see the Israelis attempting to reassert their supremacy, it will only lead to more war, and nobody knows where it's going to go, who's going to get involved in it. And that's the biggest threat now that we're living.
If you could comment on this series of events. Benjamin Netanyahu comes to Congress. He gets 5 million, basically they just stood and clapped the whole time. People talk about how many standing ovations he got. No. It would be easier to talk about the length of time Congress was sitting down, which wasn't long. Basically, it was one long standing ovation interrupted by an occasional time when Congress would sit down and listen to him, right? Then after that, we read that the Israelis, that Netanyahu got the go-ahead from Congress to attack Lebanon. Okay, this is what we hear. But prior to that, we had read that the IDF had said, we can't do it. We're running out of tanks. We're running out of ammunition. We don't have the people on the ground. We got to back down, man. We don't have the fighting power here to fight everybody at the same time. So we've got such irrationality that it appears to me the military, for all of their decadence in their actions, are more rational in that they're like, man, we just can't do this fight. And the US government and the Zionist government are saying, yeah, great idea. Let's go fight. And then immediately we get, the Hezbollah attacked a bunch of Syrians in an illegal occupation and killed Syrians. Therefore, the Israelis must attack. That's casus belli. Well, number one, the people that died weren't Israelis. They were Syrians protesting the Israeli illegal, as noted by the ICJ just last week. The Israeli occupation. So they illegally occupy Syria. And then when Syrians are killed in the illegal occupation, they say, well, we've got to defend them. We have to go back and fight. And it certainly doesn't appear at this point that it was even a Hezbollah who every time Hezbollah has attacked Israel, they've proudly stood up and said, that was us. We did it, and this is where we hit them. This is what we used. They can't stop us, blah, blah, blah. And this time Hezbollah says we had nothing to do with it, which seems to make sense. Anyway, make some sense of your thoughts of all that series of events, Laith Marouf.
Yeah, I mean, watching that speech in front of the Congress, I remembered, I don't know if you remember in Woody Woodpecker, the seal that keeps on clapping like that. That was the whole American Congress and Senate. It was amazing. It was, I think it's the biggest humiliation for American political class as a whole to stand like that in front of this dog of war. And of course, he did get the approval to continue with more wars to attack Lebanon. And he's more emboldened now that he knows Trump is going to win. And Trump wants to stop the war in Ukraine so he can concentrate on, the war in this region against the axis of resistance. And so from now till November, we should be expecting this war to intensify, and maybe even more so by the time Trump gets into office at the end of January. Now, the question is, will the axis of resistance wait to get attacked? But also, as you mentioned, the reality on the ground in the military of the Zionist colony cannot allow them really to have a full-out war. As you mentioned, the Minister of Defense said that they're running out of tanks. So how are they going to fight a war with Hezbollah? In fact, yesterday, Hamas released a promo video, a message to Hezbollah from Hamas on the ground in Gaza. And it's, showed all the Israeli tanks that are being blown up. And they told them in this message finish the job. When the Israeli tanks come to you, we're sure you're going to finish the job. And that's the truth. If Hamas can massacre all these Israeli tanks and APCs every day in video after video, what will Hezbollah do? It's going to do 10 times more than that. And now to get back to this story in the Golan, in Majd al-Shams. Majd al-Shams is the largest Syrian village still in the occupied Golan Heights. If our viewers don't know, in 1967, the Israelis occupied the Syrian Golan Heights, and they expelled 2/3 of the population. And those who stayed, the Syrian citizens that stayed there, were hoarded into 6 villages. One of them, the largest one, is Majd al-Shams. And the Syrians refused to take Israeli citizenship. Till today, only 10% of them accepted Israeli citizenship. The vast majority of them refuse to take their citizenship. They carry and fly the Syrian flag over their homes. They celebrate every year on the Syrian Independence Day. And they have martyrs and warriors and leaders that are very well known in the region. And so to claim that Hezbollah would attack Majd al-Shams, that's a stupid assertion. And clearly, the Hezbollah has been using precision munition, guided missiles, and drones that are hitting Israeli bases in the Golan Heights. They haven't even yet attacked Israeli colonies in the Golan Heights. So, and we've had previous filmed and documented video showing where the Iron Dome is missing these missiles coming and drones from Hezbollah, and straying and hitting actually some of these Syrian villages in the Golan Heights. Previously, there hasn't been yet any victims, but as we saw, this stray missile hit the soccer field in Majd al-Shams where kids were playing, and 12 youth were martyred, and at least 30 somewhat people were injured. The Israeli political class attempted to use this as an excuse, a stupid excuse, to attack Lebanon. We saw Ben Gvir and Smotrich come to Majd al-Shams on the first day after the attack, and they were chased out of Majd al-Shams by the residents who were screaming at them, saying that they are killers, and that they are dancing over the blood of their children. Netanyahu yesterday attempted to also go into Majd al-Shams, and his convoy was blockaded by the residents, and again he was chased out of the town, and the statement was made by the leaders of the communities, the Syrian communities in the Golan Heights, saying that they will not allow their children's blood to be used to kill more innocents. And so they refuse any move by the Israeli government to attack Lebanon supposedly on their behalf. And one last thing, of course, to note is that these communities are Druze, meaning they belong to the Druze sect of Islam. And we had the leadership of the Druze in the whole region come out and make statements, some of them here in Lebanon. Kamal Jumblat, the head of the Socialist Party in Lebanon, he represents the largest Druze party, said they will stand on the side of the resistance in the case of Israel attacking. The spiritual leaders of the Druze in Syria, in Lebanon, and in Palestine, all of them also came out condemning the Israeli threats and saying that Druze, you see, what the Israelis try to do with this idea of talking about the sect of somebody is to create a nation out of a sect, as they did with creating a nation out of a religion, Judaism. And that's, the way that the Israelis have been, and the West has been working for a century now in the region to break people into sects and religions and ethnicities when, you have cultural linguistic groups. And so the leaders, or the spiritual leaders of the Druze, came out saying that the Druze are a cornerstone to Arab unity and Arab identity, which is true. Many of the original Arab nationalists in the 1940s were actually from the Druze sect, and their idea of stepping out of this sect or religion and talking about linguistic cultural group is inspiring, and they know that they are a cornerstone of this identity, and they have repeated that. So it is it's going to be a very hard sell to try to create a schism between the communities here around this blood.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, didn't get a chance to talk about, but I did. We hadn't thought of. I just popped in my mind because I wanted to hear your thoughts. The ruling, the International Court ruling on Israel, the devastating ruling on Israel. I mean, let's face it. To us, it was obvious, but for a entity that is so captured by the West, by the U.S. empire, to make that kind of a ruling, as obvious as it is, what are your thoughts on that, on the important ruling against the occupation?
My first thought is how the whole Western mass media ignored it, and how many of the states that parrot this idea of international law and human rights, like Canada and many of the European Union countries, all just went silent and haven't taken any public positions on this. And this is crazy. Obviously, this is the highest court in the world. As you clearly said, it is captured by the West. Most of the judges on the panel are from countries that are controlled by the West. But the evidence is so much and so clear, and the world opinion is so heavy right now that the International Court had no choice but to make such a ruling, to actually stand by justice. Because if it didn't, this would have been the death of the ICJ, and it would have began the process of collapse of the international apparatuses that were created after World War II. And this is a dangerous situation. So clearly it's a self protection thing for the ICJ to do this. And as we see now, the Israeli government is attacking the Lebanese judge that was the chief judge in the panel, and they are threatening his life. We know that these judges are now going to have to watch their back and watch out for their family and children, what's going to happen to them. So at least we have that now. I'm just going to tell you, for instance, for me, how this case deals. I have a case where the Canadian government's been suing me now for 2 years. It still didn't even appear in court. They keep on delaying it, claiming that when I said Israel is a genocidal regime, that it commits femicide, infanticide, that this is anti-Semitic speech. Okay, I had my career destroyed and my funding cut off from ability to appear in front of the Canadian Radio and Television Commission. What's going to happen in the court case right now when the ICJ has ruled that everything that I said is a fact, right? So, this is going to help a lot of people in cases like my case, where they have been had their livelihood destroyed because they made the correct statement that Israel is a genocidal regime, that Israel is practicing apartheid. That's another thing that the ICJ ruled on. They said that Israel is committing apartheid. So where does this go from here? I'm not sure really, but hopefully it will add on to the levels of pressure that are piling up on the Zionist colony.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Another big one.
I'm sorry, I'm just like the electricity wasn't running
Take your
from the
time.
computer, so I was running out of electricity. Just want to make sure that it's working.
Sure.
All right, now we got juice.
All right, good. The issue of um, the Israelis pushing, we've briefly touched on it, but the Israelis pushing for, a wider war, saying there's a wider war, launching some attacks. Meanwhile, Iran, Hezbollah have been, the axis of resistance. I saw an article now where the axis of resistance was meeting on how to prevent a wider war. So we've got the Israelis saying we want a wider war, even though they're not in a position to wage it, which essentially means they want to drag the United States into a Middle East war. That's all that means. That they can't do it, it's obvious. They're saying we want a wider war. We can't do it. We want Uncle Sam to come in, right? And do it, which, might I add, Uncle Sam's not in a position to do right now, 90 days before an election, when, the U.S. empire is in deep and serious trouble. And not only that, it would affect, let's face it, to say it would affect gas prices is the understatement of the year. Wreck our economy. That's the other part. If they get their wider war, it wrecks the economies, destroys, annihilates the economy of the entire West at the hands of Israel. Anyway, your thoughts on who's working to prevent a wider war, who's working to get one, and the fact that it would be economic suicide for Europe and the US. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was supposed to go film in the South yesterday and today, and we were told by, the security apparatuses here not to go. So many of the journalists are not right now going directly to the South there because it's very touchy, the situation. Since the morning, there's been attacks on many of the villages that haven't been attacked yet in the South, including many that I've filmed in. People can see those reports on our social media. So it's very touchy right now, and many of the flights that are in the late evening in Beirut airport are either canceled or delayed till the morning because the worry of attacks at night and what would happen to these flights. The resistance is responding in kind. They have been attacking Israeli bases and nonstop. So there's no fear in how the resistance is acting. It is responding to any Israeli attacks with vengeance. And at the same time, I would say we are very close, the closest that we have been to a full-out war. We heard statements, of course, from the newly elected president of Iran, who is getting inaugurated right now as we're speaking, the session in the parliament where he's going to be handed over power. And we heard him say that if Lebanon is attacked, that Iran will come to its aid. Similarly, the Ansarullah in Yemen said the same thing. And, I personally think that, remember like a week ago when Yemen attacked Tel Aviv with a drone, and then the Israelis attacked the Hodeidah, and then Yemen said that they will be retaliating to the attacks on their oil facilities and their electricity plant in Al-Hodeidah, and we haven't seen that response yet. I personally think that Yemen is going to respond in a big way in the next 24, 48 hours, and that will distract Israel from attacking Lebanon. And this is kind of what the axis of resistance has been planning for a while. They don't want to allow Israel to have the ability to bombard Lebanon on the hour, because border to border you can do that. But if you drag the Israelis into a war with Yemen, the Yemeni resistance can fly drones and fire all these ballistic missiles, which the Israelis don't have. The only thing that the Israelis can do is fly their fighter jets with fuel tankers to attack Yemen, and that's something they can do once a day. Maybe you can't do on the hour as you would do here in Lebanon. So that is, I think, has been always the major plan that the axis of resistance had, is to maintain the killing fields only in the Gaza Strip, to allow the external other Axis members to wage a war of attrition against the Zionist colony, and that the Zionist colony would collapse internally without having to go to a full-out regional war that will have millions of victims. And as we see, it's been working. Even these riots that we saw and internal fighting that we saw yesterday to protect the rapist soldiers are indicators that the internal collapse is very close. And in fact, today the headline in Marouf newspaper, the second largest newspaper in the Zionist colony, was that the beginning of the collapse of the colony, the Zionist colony. So this is true. But when you think about it, of course, the enemy knows this, and therefore there is more and more possibility of them doing something irrational and triggering a larger war. The next 24 hours will be very crucial here. All day, the Israeli Air Force has been flying across the water from Beirut and breaking the sound barrier to scare people. And that's, an indicator of how crazy they're getting. I hope we don't get into a full-out war, but if we do, this will be the last war that Israel ever fights.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that Yemen is doing is, as you said, distracting them. As they search over here, they're punching them, just keep punching them so they can't focus. I think that there's a reminder. I mean, one of the things Israel has to be concerned about is the axis of resistance demonstrating their technological prowess. The fact that Hezbollah hits them whenever they want to, however they want to. The fact that whatever they do, Hezbollah is able to respond whenever, in kind. And the fact that Yemen has demonstrated, I mean, I was just surprised when I read the entire story that they were able to use drones to completely penetrate Israel's what they call an integrated networked air defense, right? So it's supposed to stop anything, and you got to go through all of these various types of short range and long range missiles and radars and all this kind of stuff. They flew right through it and hit Tel Aviv, the heart of Tel Aviv, which says they could do it anytime they want to. And that's one missile as a reminder, but it could just as easily be 100 a day. And that has to, what are you going to do if you're dealing with Lebanon and you're getting hit 100 a day? You know what I mean? Your country falls apart. That hasn't even brought in Iraq, the Syrian resistance in Iraq, Israel. There's resistance in Bahrain, probably Africa, probably areas that haven't even, certainly you're not going to show all of your abilities so that if something happened, these are the things they see. U.S. bases in Africa would likely be hit. You know what I mean? There's just the Israelis and the Americans. If I can figure this out, I would suspect they can.
But, oh yes. And just in the last few days, Hezbollah has been, firing swarms of upwards of 20 drones, and this is clearly overwhelming the air defenses of the Zionists. And at the same time, the Iraqi resistance has increased their attacks again on the American bases. Yesterday, Ain al-Assad, the largest American base in occupied Iraq, was attacked with multiple drones and multiple missiles. The American bases around the oil fields of Syria were also attacked. This is all just indicators of what's going to happen in a full-out war. Given that, Hezbollah has much more probably advanced weapons than even Ansarullah, you could imagine what's going to happen in a full-out war. I would also say that yesterday there was a statement by Erdogan, the president of Turkey, that is, some people were kind of like surprised at it, but he said that if Israel attacks Lebanon, that Turkey will invade Israel. they will do what they did in Libya and in Azerbaijan, Armenia. This is in the wars of Erdogan. So, I
A
don't want
NATO
to.
country, a NATO
Yes.
country.
And the Israelis responded by asking NATO to expel Turkey. Now, I know that Erdogan is a big buffoon, and he talks a lot and he lies a lot, but this is an indicator that actually things are not as well as people think they are within the NATO house and the imperial house. Can you imagine what's going to happen in Egypt? I mean, if Turkey does something on the border of Egypt's not going to sit aside. It's going to have to choose. Does it go with the Palestinians or support the Israelis against Turkey, right? If Turkey invades, what are the Saudis going to do? Okay. These are all questions that we don't have answers to. But it shows you how these irrational actions by the leaders in the Zionist colony and in the West as a whole are actually increasing the unpredictability and instability in the whole world. And you're right. Like, look at what would, if there's a regional war, there will be no shipping coming from Asia to anywhere in the world. It's not going to be only about the Red Sea. There will be no more oil or gas coming. What is Algeria going to do? Is it going to just sit down and watch as this war happens and the West attacks the whole region? No.
I'll add one
So,
other thing. There are a lot of African countries now who are very upset about AFRICOM. If they see the U.S. completely distracted and in trouble there, they may figure, you know what, this is our time to get you the hell out of Africa. At which time they may say to the U.S., okay, close your bases or we'll close them for you. Now,
yes.
at this point, a lot of them have military assistance from Russia and China and who knows who else, right? So it could be an opportunity for, and let's not forget, what did Russia say? Well, you're arming Ukraine. We may feel free to arm others. It may be an opportunity that other countries see to say, we're going to throw the U.S. out of Africa, Asia, that we're going to throw them out of this region of the world once and for all. If Israel starts this, and there's no way, what are they going to do? Are they going to fight the Sahel and the Middle East and Algeria and everybody at some point? And at the same time in Ukraine with Russia and on, Taiwan, what are they going to do? They're starting fights with everyone, and everyone wants them out at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, by the way, there was a quote unquote Al Qaeda, ISIS, Wahhabi death squad attack on both the Malian and the Burkina Faso military, and attacks on the Russian and Wagner fighters in those two countries. And today we hear the Ukrainian government said that they were involved in this attack. So this is, first off, it's crazy for the Ukrainians to even say openly that they did this, because they are pitting themselves against the people of Africa as a whole.
Well, add this. It shows something, doesn't it? That Ukraine is nothing but a mercenary army now. They're using them against Russia, but they're like, well, hell, if we're using them against Russia, we'll use this mercenary army in Africa or wherever. It is now the Ukrainian, and they're just kidnapping young Ukrainians, putting them in the military, and they're just using them as a cannon fodder around the world.
Yep, and you see how all of these now fronts that the United States and the West has attempted for a long time to keep them apart, to keep the people of Africa hating the Arabic people of Africa, to have the people of East Asia hate each other, whatever it is, right? That now, because these fronts are merging more and more clearly, it's becoming easier for people to rise above the regional problems that have been festered by the West for 100 years. So right now we see these countries like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali creating this confederation of the Sahel. And of course, they will come to the aid of Algeria if Algeria enters into a bigger war. Of course, they're going to enter into defense of Libya if things move out of control. You know, what is going to happen in Senegal? What's going to happen in Ghana? What's happening in Nigeria itself? So it is a blessing in a way. Look, Palestine and the battle in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, is liberating all of humanity. It's making things so clear for all of us. It is healing some wounds that have kept peoples apart, and is allowing people to focus on the main contradiction in this world, which is, imperialism and colonialism. That, instead of the internal problems like, let's say, a country like Lebanon is having, or a country like Niger is having, then when you focus on the real number one problem, which is the outside interference, all those internal problems become less important and less fractious within the society. What we're going towards is a liberation of this world. The question is, how much blood is the West willing to spill to maintain their control of humanity?
Let me ask you this. Have you heard about, I've been seeing some articles lately of polio showing up in the water in Gaza, that a possible polio epidemic there again. When you create physical desperation, when you can, contamination, uncleanliness, dirty water and all, this is the natural outcome. And that stuff is not going to stay in Gaza. It could spread into Israel. Certainly the Israelis come back and forth here all of the time, and to the West, they'll take it there. I mean, they're creating anyway, your thoughts on, have you heard anything about the potential for some kind of a polio epidemic?
Yes, I mean, the Palestinian Health Ministry have declared Gaza as a polio epidemic region. The World Health Organization is following suit. It's unbelievable, obviously, that this is happening at this day and age. But the Israelis have destroyed all the water infrastructure in Gaza. And in fact, they filmed themselves, Israeli soldiers, a few days ago, entering the Rafah water facilities and, putting these bombs on it and blowing up the whole thing, and blowing up the sewer pipes and so on. So now everything is mixed with sewer, and there is a epidemic of polio, but also many other diseases, skin diseases and what have you. People are, Palestinians, Arabs are some of the cleanest people. We don't wipe with toilet paper. And remember what happened to the U.S. with COVID. We wash our butts every time. It's people that, in Islam, you have to wash yourself 5 times a day before you pray and so on. So it's and you could imagine what is happening to these people right now, the spread of epidemics. In fact, the Israeli military right now is having to vaccinate their soldiers that are going into Gaza against polio because it's so widespread. And there's reports yesterday in Israeli media about a brain-eating bacteria that is now spreading within the Israeli soldiers in Gaza, and they don't know even what is this bacteria. So when you have a war zone with mixing of all the sewer with water, plus all the decomposing bodies, plus all the wild animals that are themselves getting diseased and eating corpses and what have you.
Insects that land on a corpse, land on feces, land on sewage, then they land on somebody's sandwich later on when the person isn't looking and fly off. The flies apparently spread cholera, things like that. There's no way to stop it when you create that dynamic.
Yes, and they are creating it on purpose. It's part of their genocidal policy to use biological warfare in this sense against the Palestinian people. And they are proud of it. They're happy about it, just like they are happy about raping Palestinian children, women, and men in their jails or on the field when they're fighting them. So this is a purposeful policy. But as you said, it's impossible to control the spread of disease by a fence. And the land is so tight. There's so many settlements right on the border of the Gaza extermination camp, that things are going to spill out of control. But this is when I say that they are doing this on purpose. We heard them in the Israeli Knesset say that these are part of the 10 curses, that will happen to the Palestinians in Gaza because they didn't accept the supremacy of the Jews. So they're looking at it, they're like waiting for locusts. This is one of the parliamentarians was talking this way about the spread of cholera in the Gaza Strip. And if we don't stop this now, obviously, this is going to be the reality for most of humanity if the Israelis are not defeated today.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Let me ask you this from a broader perspective before we go. We talked about the Middle East, the U.S. empire right now in Ukraine. There's, what's amazing is, again, we talk about the irrationality. The Ukrainians are being mowed down. They're being, they're losing a couple thousand people a day. The Ukrainians are, they're trying to escape from the country so they won't be thrown into the meat grinder. They're just being, the Ukrainian military is being smashed to pieces. And the U.S. is still writing articles about, we think the Ukrainians can win. They have no chance there. Meanwhile, they got the Israelis, which they're being humiliated worldwide in the courts everywhere else. The entire world's looking at the U.S. and Israel, and they're standing there smiling and doing standing ovations. They're in war after war at this point. The collapse is so obvious. And what do? We've got Kamala Harris, who is an absolute joke. At the same time, to put the icing on the cake, they do this, the West does this Olympic thing with people prancing all around half naked blue with their unmentionables hanging out. The collapse of this degenerate society, warmongering, murderous society is so clear and obvious for the world to see. Let me get, what's your comment on, I mean, I don't know how you put all of that together. Add this, they're saying we're spreading democracy. Here, somebody's taking pock shots at Donald Trump, which I'm not going to say who, but it kind of looks awful suspicious there, and you've got, they just said to Biden, well, you're not, after cheating in the primaries, there was no primary. And then they to Biden, okay, you got to go. Oh, you know what? We're going to take Kamala Harris. God only knows who they're going to throw in with her. There's no thought that she has any agency here. She's not choosing her vice president. She was chosen. Your thoughts on this whole mess before we go?
I saw the cover of the New Yorker yesterday, and I'm like, oh my God! It said they had Kamala Harris sitting on top of something, I don't know, a ball, and it said Camelot, and I'm like, what? they want to bring compare the mythology of Camelot to this woman. I mean, this is a society that is destroying its own, myths and fables and good stories that we all loved when we were, kids reading these things. So, look at the Olympics. The opening night, I think, shocked the whole world. Okay, I mean, anybody that was not already shocked that the Olympics allowed Israel to participate while they're banning Belarus and Russia, finally now had their the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, why would you do this? To have set up final supper table, our prophet Jesus of Nazareth, to humiliate him and his memory in such ways. And this is supposed to be a Catholic country. France is a majority Catholic country. This is their the prophet that they believe in. To do that to Jesus of Palestine, I mean, anyone that didn't see, was blind to the problems of the Olympics, have now opened their eyes. And of course, now this is emboldening more and more people inside France to oppose what the Olympics are doing. We saw, of course, multiple times during the Israeli team appearance in the soccer field for the Olympic medals, getting booed and chased out of the area. There was a funny video I saw of a Belgian youth who was being interviewed by the media about the Mali versus Israel game within the soccer Olympics. And it's in the halftime, and this is a Belgian kid. He's very nice, and he's saying, "Oh, Israel did good in the first half, but I think Mali's going to do better in the second half." And then this Israeli fanatic comes right behind him and says to him, "No, I can't talk politics." And the kid is like, "I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking about soccer." And he kept on harassing him until this Belgian kid was like, "Free, free Palestine." I mean, the worst advertisers for Israel are Israelis. The ones that make you hate Israel the most are the Israelis, not even anybody else. All you need to do to make people hate Israel is put an Israeli in a room. That's all you need to do, And so we're looking at that, and what France is doing is destroying itself. I mean, how many billions did it spend on these Olympics, and how it's pushing away people that from fans don't want to go anymore. People don't want to watch it on TV. There's nothing. People are now. The French government have now destroyed all the possibility of making any money from these events, and there's more and more advertisers that are pulling out of it. There's one last thing I think we should talk about is Venezuela and the elections there.
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we saw yesterday President Maduro win, and his opponent, who's backed by the United States and Israel, she spoke multiple times to Israeli media on Israeli televisions over the last week, saying that the first thing she will do if she gets elected is move the Venezuelan embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, basically, pledging her allegiance to the Zionist colony. And since the morning, there's been all these riots and gunning down of people. These ultra-fascists that have been funded by the United States, they're burning down hospitals and pharmacies in poor neighborhoods in order to punish the poor who elected President Maduro for a third time. And we heard Trump, of course, speak about, that if he was a president, that he would have looted basically the oil of Venezuela. And, again, we see Palestine being one of the major issues that are, deciding what's happening in the world. President Maduro chanted "Free, Free Palestine" as he went in to vote. And this fascist woman went and pledged allegiance to Israel before she went to vote. So this is now the world. Palestine and Gaza are made it clear who's on what side.
Well, let me say this as a person who's been to Venezuela, traveled throughout Venezuela, talked to the poor people out in the mountains, out in the villages. There's no chance. There's no chance that the U.S. will be able to reverse the revolution. The people in Israel, it's in their souls. I remember being in a little village, and there were some women there, a bunch of little women, they were there talking indigenous people, indigenous background. A lot of them are mixed background, right? And one of the women spoke English, and she was shaking her fist. "You tell the Americans we will fight for these little women saying we will fight for our democracy. Don't come here." So this was our she said, "We are the sons and daughters of Chavez, and we will fight." So it's in their hearts and souls. This is ours. This is our country. Nobody's going to take it. There's one of the reasons that I think the U.S. has never invaded or tried any military action on Israel, because on Venezuela, is because, number one, the Venezuelan government's armed the people. That most everybody there considers themselves a member of the militia. They will go home and get their guns. They're ready to fight and defend their country. If you put soldiers in Venezuela, there is no town or village that they could go into that they wouldn't be filled full of holes. So it's not an option, because the people in Venezuela, the poor people, the indigenous people, the mixed people, the majority, the actual Venezuelans whose history is not from Venezuela. What most people don't know is there is as in many of Latin American countries, the Spaniards, when they left a small percentage of the population, a minority percentage of the population that are Spaniards. They don't mix with the Venezuelans. They don't marry with them. You look at them and you can see, in looking at them, they're Spaniards, right? And they're right wing. And what the US and the West tries to do is maintain minority rule by keeping these right wing European Spaniards in control. And one of the things, I found this out when I was there, interesting story. One of the things I was told, when I noticed that when I looked at military people, they were all indigenous, very dark, very, indigenous people. What I was told, the reason what Chavez did to protect Venezuela for the long run is that he changed the rules, because it used to be, in order to move up in the military, you had to be one of these white Spaniards. They would not allow indigenous people into the military academies, so they could not get in charge of anything in the military. He changed the rules. So what happened now is the military is now populated to the highest level by actual Venezuelans, indigenous Venezuelans, the people that are there. So the US can't do like it does in other countries. Use the military. Look at these countries. They use the military because they've set long-term rules where only the minority Spaniards, the Europeans, can run the military. When the people elect an indigenous leader as a government, or whoever it is that they like, they use the military and overthrow the government. And Chavez, in his long-term perspective, said, I'm going to fix it so long after I'm gone, they can't do it. And that's the problem they have.
Yes, you mentioned two things there. One is the changes that happened within the military that Chavez did. The other is when General Soleimani went to Venezuela and to help them ward off interference and attacks from the outside, built a same model as Hezbollah and the popular mobilization units in Iraq within Venezuela. So yes, now you have a population that is trained, is armed, that there is a militia that, in case that there is any invasion and or coup, can help the society stay together against the interference. And look at what happened yesterday. The first thing that these fascists did was attack statues of Chavez and Bolivar and pull them down like they did in Iraq against President Saddam Hussein. Today, President Maduro was live on television just discussing these things and talking about the playbook of the colored revolution. And he called it the Gringo playbook, and he was showing how everything that is happening has already been repeated. And this is a problem for the West, because the West has now used these same tactics for over 20 years that they're becoming stale. It's hard to actually get something out of them. And that shows you also how within the Western elite, they're not able to imagine a new tactics or anything like that, because the empire is collapsing. It's the end of the road. We see just repetition of things from 20 years ago. There's no imagination left in the West. And the populations around the world are aware and ready to defend themselves. And hopefully, we wish the best for Venezuela and its people. We wish them also to go forward to talk about confederation with Colombia and Bolivia and other liberated countries in Latin America. Everybody should follow the suit of the Sahel countries. We have to end the colonial borders that were set against us as peoples, that were set by the West against us, and break them so we can have a change that is long-term, that cannot be pushed back. If Venezuela and Colombia are merged into a confederation like the Sahel countries, you will have a country that can protect itself from the United States and others.
Thank you very much. Don't forget, everyone, freepalestine.video. That is Laith's website. Go there. Make sure you donate. Whether you can or cannot afford to donate, make sure you share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms. Put a note in the post for people to go there and to donate. And also for everyone that goes there to donate, we want to keep that going for them to share the post, share it also. Let's try to keep this thing going, and let's try to expand it so we can get more and more information out and support the wonderful work of Laith Marouf. Laith, thank you very much. And I will talk to you again. Well, let's see. We'll have to do next Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm going on vacation for a week. So we'll plan for next Tuesday. How's that sound?
All right. See you then, man.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful time. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. We're out.